This is Satoru Iwata from Nintendo. It looks like I'll be delivering the first Nintendo Direct of 2014 directly to you. My name is Iwata. I'm about making games. And I'm about playing games. Last night, I played Super Smash Bros. That's my game. I kicked some you-know-what. And I took his name. His name was Reggie. We hope you won't mind waiting just a little longer. As Nintendo president, I'm also all about asking questions. So, Reggie, I have a question for you. Who's your daddy? We gave you DS, a new Game Boy, and new games to play on them. And now you say, you want a revolution? Well, we've got one. Please understand.
On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer. But in my heart, I am a gamer. I'm sure there are few of you out there in the audience today with such creativity, and our industry needs you. This truth never changes. Software sells hardware. People buy game systems to play the game they love. I think we should be proud that our best games are those whose hero and world we invented ourselves. There are games in your living room, your office, on your PDA, your cell phone, and of course, best of all, on your Nintendo DS. We are even getting smaller in how we define progress. Making games look more photorealistic is not the only means of improving the game experience. So remember, I am a man who once programmed a baseball game with no baseball players. If anyone appreciates graphics, it's me. You, non-specific action figure, did the best job. Exactly the same players who are leaving behind. Are we creating games just for each other? Do you have friends and family members who do not play video games? Well, why don't they? And I would ask this. How often have you challenged yourself to create a game that you might not play? I think these questions form an important challenge for all of us. Thank you for watching.
これで何でもできるように作ってみようというふうに思いましたね。
ある意味、とりあえず画面のついたクラシックコントローラーでもあるんですよね。
そうですね。いろんなこう顔を持ってますよね。こう見ると後ろにこう LR が2つもこう Z と LR がついてますしね。
いやでこれがいらない人は別に使わなくても
全然ほとんどこう持てばほとんど画面をタッチすると、こう持ってもほとんど画面のタッチだけで、しかもこの
Good morning, and thank you for again inviting me to GDC. During the year, one of my most important jobs is to speak to people, to reporters, to financial analysts, to business partners, and many others. But speaking at this event is special because here, today, I have the chance to speak to my colleagues. I am happy to be here. I guess some of you may have come today because you figured maybe I can learn something. Well, I hope that might be true. But honestly, the value of GDC is that all developers can learn from each other. Nintendo is no exception. And this year, we have a lot to talk about. We've all heard what the development community is saying. It's very confusing time for people, not much stability. We are all playing much bigger gambles, and that's getting scary. Everyone is vulnerable. When we hear quotes such as these from our fellow developers, it confirms for us that our world is indeed changing. But let me add two more. When we focus on what we are passionate about, it just keeps on working, proactive, not reactive. And maybe the three little words we need to remember most. Content is king. As the industry evolves, as distribution and business model change, one thing is constant. The primary need is still content. Without quality content, without the imagination of everyone in this room today, there is nothing. There is no industry. To be clear, you are the center of the video game universe. Before I deal with the here and now, I'd like to spend some time talking about the last 25 years of industry history. And it is a kind of shocking for me to realize that I have worked as a video game developer for all of those 25 years. As I said GDC in 2005, I actually began developing games while still college student. My friends and I formed the company known as HAL Laboratory. Back then, being young, I was entirely wrapped up teaching myself video game programming. Somehow, I concluded that I had video game pretty much figured out. Pretty cool, huh? And this impression carried over to my first introduction to Nintendo and Mr. Miyamoto. Also, he's young. Even after starting to work with Nintendo, I had confidence that I was better than anyone Nintendo when it came to programming technique, and the software that I was making was technically superior to Mr. Miyamoto's. And I believe this would be proven when consumers went out to buy our games. Well, I said before, it is the job of game developers to learn from each other. And Mr. Miyamoto taught me a painful lesson. Content really is king. His games outsold mine by a huge margin. I found out then that engineering isn't quite as important as imagination. To be honest, I was ashamed. And during this time, to use the English expression, I lost my attitude. Well, let me talk about these last 25 years in a wider perspective. When we began making video games, there was no industry. Very few of us considered it a profession. It was just a hobby. it was often hard to even define what our roles were. We would all just take turns doing what needed to be done. If ideas were needed, we were game designers. If characters were needed, we were artists. If music or sound effects were needed, then we would create them. And in the same way, we decided who would go out to buy lunch for everyone, who would clean up, and how we would pay the rent. Now, I realize this sounds like a good old days lecture you might hear from your grandfather. But it wasn't necessarily all better. Yes, we had a lot of fun, but there were definite downsides. We made almost no money. And what we produced by today's standards was primitive. We were video game cavemen. Today, everything had changed, everything is bigger. Graphics processing was increased exponentially, and the addition of the vast amount of memory has erased the boundaries for game worlds. At the same time, all this comes at the cost. Also, much bigger are the size of the teams required to build today's big games, the timeline they require, and the amount of money needed to fund all of this. At one time, development cost of $1 million was unthinkable. Today, many gamers demand titles that cost $50 million or more. It's still fun, but there is a lot more to worry about now than just paying the rent. Fortunately, there is one kind of growth that has helped offset cost, and that's the number of people playing games. As you are all aware, expanding the population of gamers has been basic strategy for Nintendo. That's clear with both Nintendo DS and Wii. But we wanted to measure how big the growth was. We already know how many game machines are being sold by referring sales data like NPD. But this doesn't indicate how often one game machine is shared by several players or who those players are. To understand this, Nintendo has been carrying out large-scale surveys twice a year. This began in May 2005 in Japan, and we later expanded that to both the United States and Europe. Here in America, we collaborate with an independent group to conduct mail surveys with 5,000 people aged 6 to 74. These people agree in advance to take part.